Welcome to Community Cop. My name is Julian Harper, one of the co-founder members of 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care. I'm here today with two of my co-hosts. First of all, Noel Leader.
Hotep family, and before we go to our second co-host, I just want to give big kudos to our fellow warrior, Vernon Wells. You know, he's home at this time, and I'd like to thank the ancestors and the Creator for all you, and all friends, all their prayers for Vernon. He's at home probably watching Community Cop now, and I'd like to thank his queen, Queen Tara, for being at his side through the duration of his recovery, and his beautiful daughter, Jendaya.
Yes, sir.
You know, his whole family. We just love you, Vernon. We give kudos, and we ask our family to continue to pray for his fast recovery and his health, and we'll see you soon.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, and that's from all of us, brother. You know, we love you, Vernon. We love you. And my other co-host, Big Mike, Michael Graves.
Namaste, and certainly all those that know the power of prayer and believe in the power of prayer, please set aside time and pray for our brother's full recovery. Vernon Wells, he's a trooper of the highest order. When we talk about Vernon, we talk about a real leader. So God bless you, brother, and certainly those that know the power of prayer, pray for our brother.
Absolutely. And he is looking good, brother. When I saw you, I saw that the strength was coming back into you, and again, brother, we love you, brother, and we're looking forward to seeing you.
Cut master.
Yes, sir.
Cut faster.
All right. Okay, as you guys know, this is a live program, and in approximately maybe 25 minutes, you guys will have an opportunity to call in and discuss some of the topics that we talk about, or if you have any topics of your own that you want to discuss and you would like us to comment on, we can do that as well. As you know, we always have a historical piece from our in-house historian, Michael Graves. And this week he'd like to talk about and bring to our attention the Sharpeville Massacre.
Let me just say briefly, with respect to time, the Sharpeville Massacre was one that we should never forget, because we were fighting for our rights and our own humanity, and the indigenous population in South Africa was rejecting the past laws. And certainly that demonstration went on a day, and the next day it went in front of a police station, and it was a crowd of between 7,000 to 10,000, and police officers opened fire with live rounds on them, certainly killing an innumerable amount of indigenous Africans. They would have you believe that it was only 69, but when you open up on a crowd of over 7,000 people with fully automatic weapons, and just shooting right into the crowd, you killed more than 69. So it probably could have been in the high hundreds or well over 1,000. But in any event, it was a peaceful demonstration that white people that invaded South Africa just in a just senseless, merciless way shot fully automatic weapons. This is the law enforcement. The police officers shot into that crowd, killing men, women, and children.
Okay. All right, we're going to start with, there was a shooting this week in New Zealand. 50 people were killed by a, as they call it, and I concur with Michael, you know, they like to use the term white nationalists, but I like to use the term white supremacists. And he actually videotaped it and live streamed this actual shooting. There's been a few politicians and elected officials who had spoken about this, and blame was being placed from a politician from New Zealand was actually being placed on Muslims, you know, based on their faith. That's why this occurred. And it has been unfortunate that elected officials have utilized this as a platform or to benefit them politically. And our condolences go out to the family members and people who had lost their lives during that horrific and tragic shooting. One of the problems that I have is that outside of, including the unfortunate killing, but they're attempting to make it appear as if the issue is the Islamic faith, when the problem is the white supremacists that are existing and operating from a position of hate. And we've heard many elected officials talk about this. The President of the United States has been very quiet. If he said anything, it was very silent, his position on this. But he refuses to talk about how white supremacy has been a global phenomenon. You know, it's not something that solely exists within the United States. We're talking about it's a global issue. And he, as the leader of the free world at this juncture, has not put a staunch position on condemning white supremacy. Now, my position is that he actually has a base that is full of white supremacists, and he's being supported by them, so he refuses to take a position in opposition of this global phenomenon. Noel.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's telling that the criminal, and I can use other adjectives as they do normally if there was an incident involving a Muslim group, they'll use adjectives such as animal or dehuman or inhuman. But this perpetrator, he even named President Donald Trump as being a form of inspiration for this kind of hatred. And as you stated, the president refused to repudiate nationalist groups and white supremacist groups. He even identified himself as a white nationalist. The president, when asked was white supremacy, these groups and these types of activity, if it was on an increase, he said that he didn't feel it or didn't believe it was on an increase. Matter of fact, he compared these type of attacks to relegated to a small group of individuals, even though his own Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, stated that these attacks and these groups and these activities is on an increase, not only in this country, but throughout the world. You know, so his response to that, and also when you compare his criticism of the individual involved in this particular act in comparison to how he criticized other ethnic groups involved in criminal acts, you know, he used these adjectives that are debasing them and deny them of their humanity, but he didn't do that in this instance. So it's very telling that we have a president who is a white supremacist, hardcore, and, you know, I don't even expect him to act other than the way he's been acting. It's unfortunate that you have the president of the United States still supported by many Americans who even himself have used disrespectful adjectives when he described black nations, the continent of Africa. But he's a white supremacist. And that horrific act that happened in there where an individual walked into a mosque and killed over 50 people, or 50 people and wounded many others, it's despicable, and it ought to be repudiated by everybody. There's no justification in that whatsoever. But, you know, perhaps this individual felt that he had a friend in the White House.
Well, like you talked about, he did name Donald Trump in his manifesto.
Right.
And this administration is really glossing over it. They're not even discussing the relationship that this manifesto and the person who wrote it and this killer and the connection with President Trump. I mean, he should be totally distraught that this guy even put his name in it.
Exactly.
But it's not even the topic of discussion. Mike.
Well, I'll just say about it, you know, it's well documented. Certainly he comes in the spirit. Woodrow Wilson, Andrew Jackson, these are former presidents who are white supremacists. Donald Trump is not the architect of white supremacy. He merely undergirds it like so many other presidents in the past. Yes, he's inspiring people who might have been more low-key. However, he's not the architect. He's just a continuation of a system that refuses to die.
Okay. All right. We have a film that we're going to show, a somewhat brief film. Is that clip ready? Mike, you want to introduce the clip?
Yeah, well, it should be well in already. It's a film about what happened at the Schomburg on the anniversary of Malcolm X's assassination. It's February 21st, 2019. So it's a short 3-minute film which shows you some of the concerns that we talked about last week.
I Googled autobiography. When I type in autobiography, Malcolm X's autobiography was the first book to come up. I was pleased with that. I would say that I'm pretty certain that Malcolm outgrew the Nation of Islam. It became his, it saved him. It gave him a foundation. But he was extremely intelligent. Not only that, he was his soul. He was elevated as a human being very spiritual being the seventh child. And he didn't betray us. Like for example, Elijah Muhammad. I mean, you find out, I think Malcolm, one of the things that kind of upsets me, and every time I would watch the documentary on Malcolm X by Arnold Pearl that came out in 72, and you get to the assassination piece, and they interview some of the Harlemites after the assassination, you know, I get teary-eyed. That's how emotionally connected I am to Malcolm. I think a lot of people feel that way, especially New Yorkers. And the thing that hurts me is that I'm like, Malcolm should have left. Like, as soon as he found out that Elijah Muhammad was a sexual predator, like, why didn't he leave? But then I think that, well, he probably saw Elijah as like a father figure. It probably made it difficult for Malcolm to leave.
All right, we'll take 2 more questions.
Hi. I'd like to know you all's take on Malcolm X's history as a queer sex worker. Specifically, I'd like your comments on the veracity of those claims, as well as their strategic exclusion from mainstream conversations like this one about Malcolm X.
Piece, you know, I read that, and for me, like for example, my book, I'm an open book. I think is that vulnerability actually is a sign of strength. It's not a sign of weakness. And I think for men traditionally, we're not supposed to be vulnerable, but I think we need to kind of get away from that. But when I read that, so whether Malcolm had sex with somebody in his marriage, out his marriage, or homosexual encounter when he was young, that doesn't in any way impact his greatness. When I read that, my only issue is that I didn't see enough evidence to, for that to be cited. I would need a little more evidence to cite something that significant about his sexual activity. That was my only concern about it. But whether it was true or not, I really don't care.
That's what would drive, oh, you found out something that like maybe you don't know how to deal with. And it does, we have to have those conversations, and we have to say, if all Black lives matter, then all Black lives matter. And then we have to deal with, okay, how does this, if he did sex work with men, which is then how do we feel about that, right? And guess what? We don't feel anything about that, because guess what? This man has been, God bless him, you know, but he's been gone for a little bit. So now, why is it more of a problem to have engaged in that than with him being a pimp? Why is that like, oh, we're okay with exploitation of women, but you know, this part.
All right. We'll let you open up, Mike.
Yes, my concern with it is first and foremost, from the outset, the most ardent detractors of Elijah Muhammad has never called him a sexual predator. Those that dislike or hate the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, even they have never referred to him as a sexual predator. You know, they might have said promiscuous or something. If these women today say they were his wives, and Elijah Muhammad said at the time they were his wives, then they were his wives. How dare you call him a sexual predator, reduce him to the level of a man that's going around laying in dark shadows with a weapon, raping black women? He didn't rape nobody. Those children that was produced out of those relationships are right now with the Nation of Islam in leadership positions. So who are you to just say the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was a sexual predator? And for that to happen at the Schomburg, the Center for Black Research and Culture, is disgraceful. And I'm not even advocating censorship. I'm just saying there should have been a response from the crowd. Somebody should have been man enough, conscious enough to say, how dare you talk about Elijah Muhammad that way? And then for that same person, and I'm not even talking about that other guy to his left, you know, a flaming gay guy, but that guy continued and had the nerve to say Malcolm had sex while he was married, Sister Betty Shabazz, in or out of his relationship, and even as the younger person, as a sex worker and having these relationships with men. If you don't have empirical data to support that, leave it alone. You better be lucky that that crowd was that Black Lives Matter crowd, them Negroes in Harlem. You better be lucky that, because I'm going to tell you, you would have had a challenge in Brooklyn, in Bed-Stuy, where we normally met on Wednesdays at UAM. The whole crowd would have challenged you for calling Malcolm a queer sex worker. How dare you speak like that about our shining black prince? Ossie Davis said he was our manhood, and then for that sister to come behind that and say, well, if he was a sex worker, why are you mad about him having relationships with men as opposed to he sold women? Well, Noel Leader pointed out last week, Malcolm X never sold women. That was Detroit Red that sold women. So it's just disgraceful that you are allowed to propagate your homosexual agenda and then use Malcolm, one of the greatest we've ever produced, to use him and to also at the same time find a way to just slant and just dismiss the greatness of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and reduce him to the level, as you called it, a sexual predator. It's disgraceful, and you should be lucky. All four of you professors, all four of you connected with universities, and y'all are all disgraceful. We built better professors before. Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark, Dr. Jeffries, Oswald Kwesi, Professor Simmons, and so many great others, Professor Mackey, and now look what we got. Disgraceful professors like these. Let me stop.
And they have the gall and temerity. I thought this happened in Iowa.
Harlem.
This happened in the heart of Harlem for these individuals to make these repugnant comments about two of our greatest. Talk about Malcolm X outgrew the Nation of Islam. Malcolm X never outgrew the Nation of Islam. All the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and calling him, saying that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad betrayed us. He's a sexual predator. Where's the complaint? Where's the criminal complaint? These are accusations that women have come forward and made, the victims of these allegations have made, alleged victims have made. This is spewing out of the mouth of someone who probably got a scholarship and a degree from a white university, and that's perhaps where he heard these rumors. I mean, you don't make these allegations and rumors against these great individuals unless there's some empirical data to prove that what you're alleging is true. These are allegations. These individuals have been dead for a number of years, and to spew this garbage about these two great individuals. I mean, there's a whole lot that could be said about George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Patrick Henry, the so-called founding fathers, Christopher Columbus. You never hear individuals, and they're things that could be said about them is documented. It's factual, but you never hear individuals from there. You never hear battalions castigate one of the greatest criminals in human history, Christopher Columbus. They uphold him. They elevate him. They have statues of him. They honor him. And you have these despicable individuals who come and have the gall and the temerity to come in the heart of Harlem, on the day that he's supposed to be honored or remembered, to make these despicable comments and allegations, false allegations against two of our greatest. And that's why we had to revisit this, because I know there was some comment whether or not it was actually stated.
Right.
Michael brought the proof. You heard it. In the heart of Harlem, these individuals make these false allegations against two of our heroes, our greatest heroes.
Yeah, I just want to say that in terms of being mentioned, why didn't you mention Senator Strom Thurmond from South Carolina, who raped the little girl that his mother was working in his house, in his palace, in his mansion? He raped the little girl and had a baby from her, which he forced her to keep quiet for years until he was dead. It was never even mentioned, even though people in South Carolina knew about it. Why don't you mention, like Noel said, Christopher Columbus, why don't you mention Washington, who raped all the little girls and women on his plantation? Why don't you do that? Why don't you mention Thomas Jefferson, who raped the little girl Sally Henry, 14 years old? Why don't you mention some white men, so-called founding fathers, who raped little girls?
And
but you save your poison, your venom for black men, great black men.
And I'm sorry, and since we throwing jabs, Hop, I'm gonna let you chime in. Also, some people celebrated St. Patrick's Day. St. Patrick was responsible for a genocide of African people. When they talk about he rid the snakes out of Ireland, they're talking about a tribe. I think it was the Twa people. When you look up the history, I just discovered this. I had no idea about that. But you will never hear an Irish person, a priest, when they talk about St. Patrick, talk about that part of his history when he murdered, engaged in a genocidal practice against the Twa people, on his territory.
And it's unfortunate that we have, when you talk about scholars, when you're a scholar, I mean, where did you develop and obtain your scholastic, if I'm saying it right, information? Like
scholarly information.
How did you obtain? How did you obtain this? So the problem I have is that when I always talk about us being out of our minds, and I talk about us being out of our African minds, we can't not understand when someone who is being taught and bred by someone who has no respect for your culture, have no respect for your people, have no respect for the suffering that you've gone through as an African person, teaching you that you're going to be taught incorrectly. That the things that you're going to learn are going to be skewed. That the things that you are going to bring back to your community, in this case, is going to be skewed. So, as Michael always talk about he's not surprised by white people acting the way they do. I'm not surprised when you have some members of our community who have been reared and taught by a distorted teacher who has a distorted perception of African history, when they spew information that's distorted as well. You always talk about somebody being intelligent. Intellect, it doesn't mean that you take information that was given to you and you regurgitate it. That's not someone that's intelligent. That's someone who can mimic information that's been given to them. Someone intelligent can take information that they have, learn from it, develop it, and create knowledge from things that they've extracted from society or outside sources.
Yeah, and I concur with that. I was at, I haven't been back at the Schomburg since they had a meeting around, this big gala was around Nat Turner. And the author was a white guy. This is before the movie came out. And the author was a white guy who had the temerity to say that Nathaniel Turner was out of his mind. That he was an enslaved African who had these visions, and he was out of his mind. Well, Nathaniel Turner had a vision of black spirits and white spirits, and they were in a fight. They were in a dog fight, and he felt that God told him to free our people. And he followed God and freed our people. He was always spiritual, and the elders always looked at him as a spiritual child as he grew up. And Nat Turner turned around, fought for our people, killed white people in the process of yearning to be free, and then this person had the temerity to say that he is crazy, that he was out of his mind. Well, we all should be out of our mind if we're dealing with the Holocaust of enslavement. And I intentionally use the word Holocaust because it's more than one. This is the greatest one in modern history. You can't think of another Holocaust greater than this one. Nat Turner was on his post. Nat Turner did his job. He did his due diligence to fight for our people, and we had a white man in our midst telling us that he was crazy. I had to get up. I listened and waited for somebody else to say something about Nat Turner. Nobody got up, which is a sad commentary for the Schomburg. I'm starting to see now, I think it's that crowd. We got the wrong crowd there. I had to get up out of my seat, walk over there to the microphone. They tried to stop me, but a good brother from United African Movement said, no, that's Michael Graves from 100 Blacks in law enforcement, and he has to speak, and the security backed up and let me speak, and I let him know that Nat Turner was a good man, a great man, irrespective of what you as a white man think he was a great hero to us. Consequently, the crowd started clapping after that. But their fear for white skin was so damn bad that they allowed him to call a great hero in our community a sick, demented man who was crazy. How dare them? It's the crowd. Y'all better start inviting some different people. That Harlem crowd, if you're for real, or if you coming from the other boroughs, go up there and challenge that crowd, because they ain't nothing but a bunch of Negroes.
Mike, I got to ask you a question. Just based on that last comment. Now, the colonists who fought the British for their freedom and killed British military.
Right.
Were they out of their minds?
No,
Were
they yearned to be free.
Now,
They said no taxation without representation.
Exactly. Now, do you ever hear anybody talking about them being insane and out of their minds because they fought for their freedom?
I've never heard anybody call Madison or Jefferson,
Patrick Henry, give me liberty and
yeah,
give me
give me
death.
that,
Exactly.
and Washington and all of them crazy for fighting the British over yearning to be free, over taxation without representation, and not having a say in the government. No, they've never been called crazy.
So now, when you have a man that says he's fighting for a financial benefit, saying, "Listen, I'm being taxation without representation," doing the Tea Party and all that other nonsense, as opposed, and you juxtapose that with a man who said, "Man, I'm fighting for my freedom, for my life,
Right.
for my ability to be free, to have my family, not to be whipped, not to be
Right.
raped, not to." When you juxtapose that, how do you find that one group is insane and the other group is within their sanity?
Well, do you know how sick you have to be as a white supremacist? You know how sick you got to be to call a person that's sick that's fighting you and you got your foot on their throat?
Right.
You know how sick you got to be. This is why we always say white supremacy is a sickness, that you're sick, not us. You're the one that's sick because you got your foot on our throat, you got a knife in our chest, you just got a chain around our neck, around our ankles and everywhere, and you have the nerve to say, what's the problem?
Yeah, and it's
you sick and you out of your mind.
It's funny, one of the first, diagnosis of being crazy was whites who determined that Africans who wanted to be free were mentally ill. And there's a whole study over this. I think it's in that book that the sister wrote about medical apartheid. How
phenomenal book.
Yeah, that whites used to determine that Africans who wanted to be free were mentally ill, and that's preposterous. But that's an indication of the society that we call America. To determine that if an African wants to be free from enslavement, that he was mentally ill, that he had a mental sickness that needed to be diagnosed and needed to be treated. It's crazy.
All right.
Yeah, that's like going into a lion cage and the lion cage take care of business on you, and you turn around and call a lion crazy.
And kill a lion.
A lion is territorial. You go in his cage or into his territory, you violated that, and he got children around, and a white person will actually say, he went crazy on me. No, the lion knows you. Everywhere you went, it's been turmoil, it's been disease, it's been one attack after another. A lion's not gonna let you near his children. So we shouldn't either, because a lion knows that left to your own devices, you find a way to kill his offspring.
All right. Thank you for that, Mike. Noel, I'm sure that the audience is going to love that piece. We're going to try to get into one, maybe possibly two. I don't know if we're going to have enough time of our topics. A police officer from Chesterfield was suspended for being associated with hate groups, white nationalist groups, white supremacist groups. Noel?
Right. Recently, there was a story that came in March 18 about an officer who was a member of a white supremacist white nationalist group called Europa, and this is something that we talked about here on Community Cop, that the FBI has long stated that the white supremacist and nationalist groups were had an interest in infiltrating law enforcement communities and or recruiting members of law enforcement. And this is a problem that is going mute. And when you see what happened, as you stated, in another country, as relates to the rise of these groups in New Zealand, but it's happening right here in America in the family of law enforcement. In 1991, a U.S. district judge found that members of local L.A. Sheriff Department had formed a neo-Nazi gang. These are officers and habitually terrorized black and Latinos. I don't know if some of you remember, we talked about a while ago, in 1995, ATF, FBI, DEA, they had an event called the Good Old Boys Roundup, where they had a nigger checkpoint for people who were driving on the premises and asked, was any niggers in the car? They were selling federal nigger hunting licenses.
So they used that word?
They used these words.
They didn't say N-word?
No, sir. They said the word. And
so you repeating what they said?
Exactly. We're repeating what they said. And this was captured on film because you had a disgruntled law enforcement member on the premises recording this. And mind you, this is FBI, ATF, and DA, as well as other local law enforcement agencies. And they had signs saying 17 cents a pound for field-dressed and boned nigger meat. These are law enforcement officers. And lastly, in 2008, Chicago detective John Burgess was fired and eventually prosecuted for being a member of the Ku Klux Klan and found and tortured at least 120 black men during his decade-long career. He used this electrical shock instrument that he called a nigger box. But my point is saying is...
He called it what?
A nigger box.
Okay.
That's what this white law enforcement officer... He was found guilty of terrorizing and torturing over 120 black men. So this is something that we talked about in this program. When we see all these police killings, these police murders, these police criminality, and we call it, a racism. We say that racism is at the core of it. That's being ignored. The FBI has stated that neo-Nazi members, white supremacists, and nationalists have joined law enforcement agencies throughout the nation, and our community ought to be alarmed. And I'm tired of hearing when a member of law enforcement shoots somebody and they throw it out there, well, I don't believe he woke up this morning saying he's going to shoot somebody. We don't know now.
Right.
These are neo-Nazis infiltrating the law enforcement community in this country.
But real quick, and I want you to add this in, because you were talking about the EMS that was affiliated with the neo-Nazi group who had a podcast.
Right, and
right.
second,
Just tie that one in.
Right, we talked about a neo-Nazi EMS worker named Al McNabb, who had a racist program, a neo-Nazi podcast, and he was suspended because he made some racial statements. As an EMS worker, he called African Americans gorillas and monkeys, and he bragged about torturing a young black man. He says there was a young African male who was in the hospital to get blood drawn. So guess who volunteered to take his blood? He told his co-host. He says that he enjoyed greatly immense satisfaction as he terrorized his youngster with a needle and stabbed him thrustly in the arm with a large gauge, IV catheter. So he basically he basically bragged about torture. So he was suspended, but this week his trial, it was proven that he has a freedom of speech, and he said that he was just joking when he made those comments on his podcast, and they suspect that he's going to be put back to work. With this history, but brothers and sisters, this is what we're facing in law enforcement, in the courts, in EMS, in the hospitals, and it's preposterous.
Throughout society, and I always talk about how we sometimes don't realize, just consciously, that there is a real attack on African people, and I'm talking about throughout society. When you go to the hospital, when you go to, and I'm not saying totally across the board, but there are times when you have members who have a real disdain for African people, and the way they treat us and deal with us is just horrific. But I know we got a lot of calls online, so we'll go to the callers. First caller, welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from? Quick question or comment. Okay, first caller, you on the line?
Yes, sir. Kareem from Harlem.
Okay, brother. Peace. How you doing?
Peace. How y'all, brother?
All right.
Yes, I just want to add something. Brother Mike, I was at that thing at the Schomburg, and I spoke up just before you did. If you remember, brother, as I was going out, you shook my hand.
You talking about Nat Turner?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
I made a statement about there's a lot of Nat Turners, and they're all part of our struggling up. I just want to say this.
Kareem.
Yeah.
You still there?
Yeah, I'm still there.
Okay. Do you verify that a white man in Harlem at the Schomburg called Nat Turner crazy?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just want to be right.
What I had to say, and you also did the same thing. Okay, secondly, if you remember, brother, the Black Lives Matter was overtaken by Jewish white lesbians. So what they're trying to do is make our people attack our people and make us confused and not understand who our really heroes really are. And Muhammad is one of our highest brothers that has tried to uplift our people.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
The last thing is that these people are doing this to try to destroy our people. That's why it's so important for y'all to do what y'all doing and to keep imparting the information to our people and teach your family and your children the history so these devils and these upper-town Negroes who don't know anything about Malcolm X or Elijah Muhammad cannot get away with what they say, and the crackers also. Thank y'all, brothers. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Thank you for your call, brother. Okay, next caller. Welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from? Quick question or comment?
How you doing? I'm Luther from Harlem.
Okay, brother.
Brothers.
Peace.
I just want to know an answer from y'all. Why are they pushing this homosexual culture so hard? They want to teach the little boys in school that love is love. I don't want my little son to know about love is love, loving another man. I mean, just tell me why they pushing it. Look what they did to hip hop. I mean, it it just makes me feel like I don't even belong on this planet with these people. Y'all brothers have a blessed day, and I love to hear y'all get everybody stirred up because they sure do it with their evil ways. Thank you, brother. Y'all have a blessed one.
Well,
Okay,
I just
brother,
say that.
one of the things we have to remember is that we have to teach our children. You know, that one of the things that's important is that when you allow someone who has a different perspective, a different way of teaching, a different thought process as you to teach your children, then they're going to teach your children wrong. So we have to teach our children. And I'm not even going to try to analyze why they do what they do. You know, as Mike and Noel said there's a sickness in the minds of these folks. So as opposed to trying to analyze it, the bottom line is that we have to teach our kids.
I'll just say this: European culture, it is an antithetical to African culture. If you uphold African culture, you do not condone the homosexual lifestyle. They're trying to inject a European culture into our system. They're trying to replace black studies, which they've been discussed outright over the last 10, 15 years. They're trying to replace black studies with LGBT or LGBT forum is going on all over the country. It's not accidental that you see it every day rearing its ugly head.
And that picture that the man that you just showed, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, once said, if they don't treat you right, what makes you think they will teach you right? And they won't, you know. But we, as Julian said, we have to inform our family because we heard it from actors and actresses who they always encourage black actors to dress up as a woman. We heard it from, as a brother talked about, the hip hop culture is being invaded with these false images, and it's not a part of our culture, and it's something that I believe we definitely shouldn't accept the introduction of these false notions, especially demasculize. What's that word?
Demasculization
of the black male. That is the emphasis.
Feminization.
The feminization of the black male is the emphasis in this society, and we ought to speak about it.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you for that call. Next caller, welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from? Quick question or comment?
I'm calling from Manhattan.
Okay, go ahead, sister. Quick question or comment. Okay, go ahead, sister.
I'd like to make a comment about Nat Turner.
Go ahead.
And I just want to say that the spirit and the image of Nat Turner will always, always be a threat to all white people. Because for that guy to say he was crazy shows hysteria on his part. It shows the malfunction that he was thinking, the fear that he was thinking. Because Nat Turner represented brilliance. He was brilliant.
That's right.
He was self-loved. He was ambitious. He saw the future. And he did God's work like every other warrior in the Bible did God's work.
Right.
So I want to let you know that my son is grown now, but in the 4th grade on Black History Month, they had an assignment to do a thing on Martin Luther King. When he came home, I told my son, no, we're going to do this on that time.
That's right.
Everybody knows about. My son called me from the principal's office the next day, crying. I had to come pick him up. They pulled him out of the class when he was to give his presentation. Well, long story short, I rolled all over that principal.
There you go.
When I finally calmed down, I gave them a lesson in history. You know, you got to focus. This is a big thing. Martin Luther King does not represent everything in our black children growing up. And it worked. You know, they loosened up a little. But it infected my son for a long time. He was mad at me for a long time until he grew up and understood.
Right.
But I'm saying that spirit of Nat Turner, when we're dead and gone, it's going to always be fearful. It's going to always be a thing of fear. And that white man showed signs of hysteria. He was hysterical inside to call him crazy because he was fearful.
Right. All right. Thank you,
story, sister.
Yeah, thank you, sister, for that call and that information. We appreciate it. All right. Next caller, welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from? Quick question or comment?
I'm calling from Brooklyn.
Go ahead, brother.
Mike, Noel, Julian, thanks for standing up for Malcolm like black men. Now,
yes, sir.
Black Lives Matter. Their money come from George Soros.
That's right. That's right.
George Soros is a Jew who changed his name to Soros. Okay, so he is definitely pushing this in black gay thing. and a lot of Black Lives spokesmen are black gays. So and these college professors, what university do they work for?
Various.
But their salary come from whites?
Oh, yeah, most likely,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Okay, so they have to follow the white agenda. And that is to try to make the black male as feminine as possible.
Right.
No, what is your term you always say? He who pays the piper?
Yeah.
Calls the tune.
Calls the tune.
Calls the tune. So,
And,
we... Go ahead, brother.
And I also say a paycheck is somebody paying to keep you in check.
Exactly.
Right. All right, thank you.
Thank you, brother. We appreciate your call. Next caller, welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from? Quick question or comment.
Brother Murray, how you doing? Julian, Noel, Big Mike, how you feeling today?
Peace, brother. How you doing?
Family. C-SPAN. Give something like that in Brooklyn and you see what happens. We're waiting. And next year, we will be waiting next year, because they will have it next year at the same time. We will be waiting next year. Number one, Father Flanagan and them has been raping for 100 years. Nothing about Father Flanagan and them in the Catholic Church. C-SPAN, Father Flanagan in the Catholic Church. Number two, that's why history is so much important. Community Cop Family, the 27th of March. Mackey's to the 3rd at 103 Quincy Street. A-Train, C-Train, and Franklin Avenue walk down the block. 7:30 to 10 o'clock. History is most important. March 28th at Supreme Court, right next to Municipal Credit Union on J Street. Little Sister Maya that was being raped by her father. Thumbs down to all the churches in the community for not helping this young lady with any kind of services.
Brooklyn Criminal Court, the 28th.
Brooklyn Criminal Court, right next to Municipal Credit Union, March 28th. Please be there. It just lets you know which way Harlem is going, sense justification. And them gay boys doing what they doing. They want to just destroy anything Malcolm and Elijah Muhammad, but it's a shame that is the greatest mosque in the country is in Harlem, and nobody was there to even defend not only Malcolm X, but Elijah Muhammad.
That's right.
The Catholic Church has been doing it.
Right.
Give something on that. We'll be waiting for you next year.
All right.
We will be there.
Thank you, brother.
No doubt
We
about
appreciate
it. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. We appreciate the call. Next caller, welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from? Quick question or comment?
Yes, this is the poet calling from Harlem.
Okay, go ahead, brother.
Oh, all right.
All right, to those who slander Elijah's name or desecrate his deeds, you won't escape the wrath of God, nor will your cursed seeds. Refrain from speaking or cleverly leaking false rumors and outright lies, for the day will come when the deaf and dumb will see with their lying eyes. You have been warned, we won't be scorned. The children of Elijah have spoken. We know who you are. You won't get far, as the circle will never be broken.
All right.
All
Yes,
right,
sir.
brother.
Thank you, brother.
Hey, brother. All right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Beautiful.
We appreciate that, brother, and I'm sure that the Community Cop family appreciates it as well. Peace. The next caller, welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from? Quick question or comment?
This is Eddie from the Bronx.
Go ahead, Eddie.
All right.
Yeah, I agree with Joe 100% on this whole thing there, man. George Soros not only is the conspirator behind that whole Central America mess with all those people being flooded there into the western borders, but this whole thing with him, I think definitely he is behind this whole Black Lives Matter thing, because look at the chaos they have caused with all this thing. I mean, you get all these psychopaths coming in there, these professors, I don't know where the hell they came from. That's why I turned it off when they put them on C-SPAN. But like I said, I'm waiting for some real brothers to go up there and put out the real history about what happened in the 20th century, because those professors don't know a damn thing. I'm out of here.
All right. Thank you for your call.
Let me just jump in real quick.
Brother.
There's a text and there's a pretext. So we do believe Black Lives Matter, but we believe that organization, after they've gotten the limelight and got put forward a positive message that Black Lives Do Matter, they have a subliminal message where they pushing this homosexual message, and they try to combine, like many do, the rights of these LGBT, whatever they call themselves, community, and mixing that with black people having human rights. And there's no comparison. And I do not like them joined together because they're not one and the same.
Right. And as you listen, initially when you heard the topic of issues that are malaffecting black people, now the homosexual tone is becoming even louder. You know, you start to hear more of the LBGT issues being discussed, being addressed, as opposed to issues that are malaffecting African people. I mean, as Michael always say, man, the foots have been on the backs of African people since the beginning of this country, the development of this nation. But as you see, the tables are starting to turn, and now other topics are being discussed. You know, our issues that are still in existence, and with the still with the same staunchness, the still strength of African people being attacked, but the screams and the issues that are the topics of them being addressed are becoming less and less.
And I would just add to it, and certainly I concur with what has been previously said. I would just add to it that Black Lives Matter has never been right. They are an opportunist organization. The basis of their getting together is for an homosexual agenda. They took the term Black Lives Matter when they saw Trayvon Martin being senselessly killed by George Zimmerman, and then they pimped it even further when they went to Ferguson, where Black Lives Matter and real black men, not gay men, real black men stood on their posts, and black women stood on their posts and didn't even back down from highly mechanized weapons that Ferguson and other surrounding police departments utilized on them, throwing out tear gas. And black women had their babies out there, and they still threw the tear gas right around that, and they didn't even run. For them to stand like that, they were strong. The Black Lives Matter organization took that thing about Black Lives Matter in this country and pimped it ever since. They have never had the right agenda. It's right there if you go to their website that they're about that gay lifestyle, and that's what they're utilizing black pain and suffering to further engage into what their real agenda is, which is the LGBT rights stuff.
And all anyone have to do is punch up on the internet to see who they get money from, to the tunes of hundreds of millions. They're getting paid, and they didn't come to the defense of Colin Kaepernick strong enough. They didn't come out against the National Football League. If they really thought that Black Lives Matter and Colin Kaepernick took a position as it relates to these unjustified police shootings and killings, they never came. Jackson, who received millions of dollars from white corporations. They never called for economic sanctions. That's what that's what Martin Luther King did. That's what the United States does against countries they're against, enact economic sanctions to punish them economically. But none of these organizations, none of these individuals will ever call for economic sanctions against white corporate America, because they're in the pockets of white corporate America. And they have these hidden agendas.
Right. All right. Next caller, welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from? Quick question or comment?
Yes, hello.
Yeah, where you calling from?
Blackwood, Brooklyn.
Okay, go ahead.
Turn it up.
Turn on. Hey, I want to thank all you brothers for being together again. I miss the Father Lucas. All right?
Yes.
So do we, brother.
I thank you for your tutelage on teaching me about black history and about black. I missed a lot of that, but I'm glad you brothers are filling me in on that. And I thank you very much for that.
All right.
The other I want to ask is this. My state senator asked a question about what is the law that we can devise for Albany. Now, he sent me a questionnaire about a law, to make a law, go into Albany to make a law. And I want to ask you brothers to help me out with that.
Well, let me just say real quickly, the problem is we don't need more laws. We need the laws that are already on the books enforced. Now, what they're thinking about and considering, it might be a good law. It might be something decent that can be better utilized. But right now, 100 blacks in law enforcement are saying, enforce the laws that are on the books in a fair and equitable way, and we'll be okay.
Now, was he in regard to any law in particular?
No, he's just talking about something new that he would have to call us off the record.
Right. Because I know there's one law that we are supporting as an organization is for the district attorney to have to give up Rosario material at an earlier time. You have people languishing in Rikers Island, who don't have, their attorneys don't have discovery material, because New York State is one of only 3 states in the whole country where the district attorney can hold on to that information for a long period of time. And what they do, they keep people at Rikers Island hoping to force them to cop a plea, saying, listen, if you cop a plea to a lower charge, to a reduced charge, we'll let you out now. And even though they may not have any evidence that the person committed the crime that they're being accused, and the person may declare they're innocent, but because they want to get out, they just, cop a plea to a reduced charge. So there's a law that's the New York State, we're hoping that they pass it. There's a whole lot of groups that are community groups that are pushing this, as well as 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care and the Grand Council of Guardians and the Latinos Officers Association. I hope to get this law passed so that the district attorney has to give up discovery material, residing material, after the grand jury if they want to prosecute these cases.
There's other states that already have this law.
Most states in the country has it. New York, the state senate, who has been in Republican hands for many years, have been an obstruction to this law being passed in New York, because the state assembly has passed it on many times, but it always died in the Senate. But now that the Senate is in the hand of Democrats, we're hoping that it can get passed.
Good. Next caller, welcome to Community Cop. Were you calling from a quick question or comment?
Assalamu alaikum.
All right, so look along, brother. Where you calling from?
Yeah, I'm calling from Harlem.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, Brother Mike, you said you was at the Schaumburg and a white man said something that down the Honorable Elijah Muhammad?
No, when the white man did it, he was denouncing Nat Turner and characterized Nat Turner as crazy. It was 4 black professors on the stage when the mischaracterization of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X happened. 4 black professors.
Yeah, well, what I don't understand, how did they get away with that when I understand that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's grandson now has the Schaumburg?
No, he's at Harvard now. He's been going a while.
He's gone. Okay. I know they wouldn't allow that. Okay, thank you, brother.
Okay, brother.
Thank you, brother.
Next caller, welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from? Quick question or comment?
I'm calling from Manhattan.
Go ahead.
And I just got in, so I didn't really catch everything, but I did get to hear Mike say, basically, gay black men are real men. Just give me my chance. Let me finish saying what I'm saying, which I won't be long-winded. Gay black men are men. They're real men. Okay? They may be gay, but biologically they're still men. That's number one. And I'd like to know, when a woman looks tomboyish, like Keisha from Straight Back Pride.
Keisha does not look tomboyish.
Is she still because she's always talking about she's straight, but she looks like tomboyish. No disrespect. I'm just asking a question. And we as black people, we are going to have to be able to talk to one another. We may not agree with each other, but we still got to have that dialogue in order for us to survive.
Well, let me just say, no, I'm going to answer your question. Look, Keisha's my little sister. I'm going to tell you. Keisha, let me just, let me just tell you for the record.
Let me answer the question.
Just because a woman does not wear weaves and wigs, hold on. Just because a sister, hold on. I want to let you know, because of that European mentality that exists, that a black woman has to wear makeup and lipstick, weaves in the hair, and wigs and all that stuff.
We got to listen to each other. We got to listen to each other. One person at a time.
We got to look natural. I saw the women in Black Panther. They look just like Keisha. The women in Black Panther in Wakanda. Wakanda is real. No. You're not going to out-talk me on this one, because you mentioned somebody that I love. And I'm telling you that just because a black woman does not wear wigs, does not wear weaves, does not wear makeup, does not wear lipstick and those excessive earrings and all that other stuff, because she's not doing that, don't make her a tomboy. Get your African mind right. And you see a black woman, the true beauty of a black woman, and when she doesn't have none of that stuff on, that's a real black woman, and that's what Keisha is. That's right, and I'm telling you. Just because she don't wear all that foolish stuff, that sister in Black Panther said she felt foolish with all that makeup and wigs and all that crap on. If you knew who you were, you wouldn't say that about any black woman.
And it's kind of telling how one way you can say that a man who might consider himself homosexual is still a man, but then you would cast shade on the sister. Sister, your analysis and your comments is contradictory, and it shows something more about you and what you about, as opposed to how you really feel, because you could defend one in one side
One
of the
breath,
mouth and then go the stone at another. That's contradictory system.
And it's all about being fair and being equitable in your analysis of people and their response. And how they carry themselves. Now, I'm not judging anybody on how they dress or how they look and what they do. But, sister, as Noel stated, you should be fair in your analysis, especially when you support one end and then you have a more of a less than fair assessment of someone else. Right. But next caller, we got another call. Welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from? Quick question or comment?
Hello.
Go ahead. Where you calling from, caller?
I'm calling from Chelsea.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I read this book, half a book by it was by Quincy Jones, and in the book he said that Richard Pryor had sex with Marlon Brando, and he said that Marvin Gaye had sex with Marlon Brando. I couldn't keep reading it after that, but is Quincy Jones the one that said that Malcolm X did queer work?
No, it wasn't Quincy Jones. It was the 4 professors that was on that panel. That's all I can say about it.
There's a. You got something you want to say?
No. I want him.
There's a lot of a lot of things that I'm just not going to feed into.
Yeah, right.
Because a lot of times when you add fuel to the fire, then it just keeps this insanity going.
Right.
We have to get our minds right. We have to start thinking from a position that's going to have a positive effect on African people, as opposed to chasing this
foolishness.
Yeah. Thank you. I was thinking of another word, but I'm going to use allow that one to go. We run out of time, so I'm going to give our panel an opportunity. Go ahead,
and I
Noel.
take issue with all these accusations, even one about Michael Jackson being made against people once they pass. They can't defend themselves, not from reliable sources, but subject sources. But as you stated, we on Community Cop, we don't feed into this foolishness. But Little More, I love you. Community Cop family, I love you. Knowledge is power. That'll be it for me.
Well, let me again reiterate, first and foremost,
Lenny Lou, I love you. Kitty Cat.
Those who believe in the power of prayer, let's pray for a full recovery for our brother Vernon Wells. You can listen to Straight Black Pride, Blog Talk every Thursday night, 7 to 10 p.m. Blog Talk, Straight Black Pride, 7 to 10 p.m. Let me just say for the record, just for those who might feel that I was